believe that your time is valuable, that you as teachers are valuable, and we really want to allow you to effectively and proudly showcase your work in Atlas. It is your professional portfolio, and we want you to take ownership of that. So all these tips are items that you can apply today, but feel free to, as you're hearing the tips, break it down, maybe put all of them but one in your back pocket and just take one and apply it, and sort of work with what you want to. You know your classroom and your teaching style best, so this is really just food for thought for you. So again, here are the tips today. There are 6 of them. If you've got more, though, please let us know, because we love hearing the ways you guys use Atlas. Some of these tips are actually inspired from ways that we have heard teachers apply this in their classroom as they're developing their units. So let's just jump in, because today we've only got 30 minutes, and these 6 tips are pretty awesome. So tip number 1, first we're going to capture the excitement with descriptive unit titles. So as teachers, we are excited about our content, and I know some of my favorite parts of teaching were coming up with the units that I was going to share with my classes. And so in Atlas, one way to convey that excitement, not only to yourself, to remind you throughout the year what you have to look forward to, but also to show other teachers what you're working on, is to make your unit titles more descriptive. So let's jump into our Atlas systems here. I have here just a sample classroom. Again, I've gone into Develop and just gone into my English 8 class. I actually taught middle school English for quite some time, so this is my personal favorite content to work with. And you can see some comparisons here. Now, in the first 3 units, I've gone through and made some modifications and made these unit titles more descriptive. You can see that maybe in the first couple weeks of September, I'm really working on back-to-school classroom expectations and procedures. And then we're going to get into a couple of novels, Stargirl, Interacting with Your Identity, and looking at comedy and plays with A Midsummer's Night Dream. But as the units continue, you can see that units 4 through 8 aren't that descriptive. So Megan, what could that potentially say to other teachers, or what kind of information could that convey?
Yeah, so one of the best reasons to use Atlas is that you can make those connections between classrooms. If I'm your social studies colleague in 8th grade, I might be looking for an opportunity to reinforce some of what we're doing. I see you have A Midsummer Night's Dream, certainly a lot of historical connections I can bring up with Shakespeare. But when I get down to those Unit 4, 5, 6, I really have no idea. So it really limits our collaboration. It makes it a lot harder to get on the same page.
Absolutely. So if I were going through my units and I wanted to maybe take some time to improve upon these unit titles, I would just click on this green Actions button next to each unit, and you'll see that a bevy of options pop up. In addition to some communication tools that you have, you can rename your unit. It's the second option down. You'll notice it with a pencil icon right next to it. And generally in the system, if you see this pencil icon, it means that you have the ability to edit that category or that section. Once I click Edit, that window pops up that says Unit Name, and I can just rename it. So let's say this is actually a unit on the Hunger Games, and I'm looking at government and society. Let's use a ampersand there. And this unit will be looking at how government and society interact and how society and government can influence one another. And so already this unit title is slightly more detailed, and maybe the social studies teacher would be able to find ways to collaborate.
Absolutely, and I do see a question coming through asking about what kinds of naming conventions should be in place. And that's something that's really up to you and your school. So if your school hasn't had a conversation about how to name units, that might be a great thing to bring up at a staff meeting. But we do see a lot of different approaches. Some are skills-based, so maybe you're thinking about what skills you're highlighting in the standards and trying to bring those into the unit titles. Sometimes they're more topic-based, like we have some kind of topic-based names here, identifying which novels we're using, what we're reading. Really no right or wrong answer, but a great thing to think strategically about so that you know you're all on the same page.
Absolutely. And one thing I just wanted to highlight very quickly, if you're interested in more collaborative opportunities, one tool to use is the comparative unit calendar. And I opened it up here in a separate window. Again, if you're interested in learning how to make this report, there are some awesome reports webinars. But just for context, I went to the reports tab at the top of the Atlas page, and I just went down about halfway to comparative unit calendar. You can see here I filtered for specific courses, and as an English 8 teacher, I want to collaborate with the Social Studies 8 teacher and see where we can find some areas to really work together and make our curriculum more cohesive for our students. And as you can see in this report, those unit titles become really helpful because I'm able to look and see where maybe some of these units coincide and where we can begin to, again, talk about the content in a more cohesive manner. So again, maybe Hunger Games, Government and Society, that Becoming a Modern Nation would be a great unit to collaborate on. So this is just, again, one way that you can see how these unit titles can really improve upon even just discussing collaboration opportunities in Atlas. So tip number 2 is prioritize standards as you go. So once you've got your units into Atlas, you're ready to begin to align to the standards. Let's go back to that English 8 course. And today, I think I want to work on Star Girl, interacting with your identity. And so you can see here in my template, yours might look a little bit different, but I've already aligned to some speaking and listening standards and some language standards, but nothing that really has to do with the literary content that we're dealing with, which is building relationships, interacting with others, and building identity. So after clicking that Choose Standards, there are many ways I can begin to search for these standards that I think fit the content. The first is just to browse standards, and you can see this filter here. I've clicked on English Language Arts, grade 8, and I've looked at the strands, and right now I'm clicking all strands, but I could go into reading literature and see what literature standards maybe coincide with the specific content that I really want to address. And if I can't find, maybe there's a lot of standards I don't really want to read through, or if I want a quick sort of look, I can enter a search term in this upper left-hand search box. So if I want to look at maybe interact, see if there's any standards in reading literature, lo and behold, reading literature standard 3 has to do with how particular lines of dialogue and individuals and events interact over the course of a text. So I can click on that, and you can see that now I have targeted that standard 5 times in my course, and I've actually even assessed it 12 times, so it's a really important concept that as an 8th grade teacher, I really want my students to grapple with. Now, if I want to then further look at the standards that I've targeted that have to do with interaction, I can see standards targeted or not targeted in this course, as well as targeted and not targeted that are assessed. But one thing to keep in mind about this search filter is that it's all-inclusive. So anything that is selected, it will go to that lowest common denominator. So if I want to just search the standards in general that I have aligned, I would try to make this a more broad selection before I choose filtering standards that I've targeted in this course. And again, now I'm not just including standards that have to do with interaction or relationships. It's every standard I have targeted specifically. Are there any questions on this, Megan, or do you have any details that you'd like to add?
So far, well, our chat has been pretty quiet for a little while, so please do chime in, all of you listening, with questions, comments, ideas. I did link in a blog post that corresponds with our content today that you can continue to refer back to. We're not seeing any specific questions coming through, but Jenny, I did want to highlight here. I see we're looking at the standards targeted in this course, but we have another option to look at the standards not targeted. That's one I always like to highlight because as a teacher, sometimes it's very informative to see, here's the things that I haven't yet targeted, I'm not teaching these yet, where can I fit them in, or do I need a new unit, etc.
Absolutely.
And with our prompting, we did have a question that just come in asking, where is this section? So if you can, Jenny, maybe show us how we got to this standards box.
Absolutely. So depending on the template, because each template is designed and customized by your school, if you have a standards section, typically it'll be called standards and benchmarks or maybe objectives. The language might be a little different, but you should see a button, you have this box that says choose standards or choose benchmarks or choose objectives. When you click on that, a window will pop up. And so that will take you to the area where you can begin to filter and search through the standards you have in your system. And if you're not seeing a box like that, that actually is a great opportunity to maybe talk to your administrators, maybe say that you're aligning to standards or you're trying to align to standards and you'd like a way to capture that in that list.
Yep, and just to back up a little further in case in case you weren't quite with us, Jenny's in the Develop section. She's in one of her courses and in a unit. So that's where you'll find categories like this.
Yes. Awesome. Are there any other questions that have come in, Megan?
Someone asked for, I can answer these right on here. So no, I think we're all set. Thanks, Jenny.
Perfect. All right, so again, we've gone through our unit titles. We've begun by outlining our standards that we want to address in our unit. We find that many of our schools, not all, but many, work through a backwards design modality. So identifying these standards is really helpful because it prioritizes the content and skills that you're going to teach in that unit. And so once you've got the goals for your unit, what you really want to address, our third tip is to curate your digital binder with attachments. And this is the really fun part. I love finding resources for my students. I love sharing those resources, but a lot of times those resources are in a lot of different places, and it can get kind of crazy keeping track of them. And one of Atlas' strengths is that if you are able to attach all of your resources, this becomes really your one-stop shop for everything that has to do with your curriculum and your units. And so once I'm in my unit, again, I've gone into my course, I've clicked on a specific unit title. I can minimize maybe these standards and benchmarks because I've looked at them, I already kind of know what I'm addressing, and then I can begin to look at my other categories. So again, this is customized to your system, so you might not have the same language, but for each category at the bottom, you should have a link that says Add an Attachment. You'll see it at the bottom of every single category. When you click on that link, that will allow you to choose one of about 5 options. You can attach website links, display images, attach a variety of files, lesson plans, and we can even enable connectivity to your Google Drive. So what's really nice is that if you have all of these resources ready to go, maybe in your Google Drive, and you don't want to individually export and attach them separately, you can feel free to attach your Google Drive, make that a link, and everything will be there. What's really nice and what I wanted to showcase are the variety of ways these attachments can show up in your Atlas system. So in addition to files showing up as links that you click, you can also attach images that display. So what's really fun is maybe you have a GIF like this that at the start of your unit you can bring up, have displayed for your class, and ask them to brainstorm. This is the cover of our book. What do you think this book will be about? And just get students looking at your unit planner as well. You can see here, in addition to attaching images, you have the ability to attach videos from YouTube, which is really helpful. I know I show a lot of videos to my class. The benefit to this, instead of just saving that link and going directly to YouTube, is not only will this video play embedded in the Atlas site, so you're not having to go to YouTube and maybe handling some of the sidebar videos that will show up in relation to your video, but you can also modify the URL to start at a specific point in time. So if maybe you wanted to start a minute in, instead of having to fast forward, you can always click this pencil edit button. Remember, anytime you see it, you can modify the content, and you can take this link and change it. And I wanted to show you this quick trick. I copy and pasted this link from YouTube. So this is the link you would normally put in. Normally, the YouTube link ends with a question mark. And you'll see it here. This is just embedding the whole video. But one trick as a teacher you can do is add on to that, start equals, and then put the second that you would like the video to start. So if I wanted to start this video at about 1 minute and 13 seconds, I would put 73. And so that allows me to start that video exactly where I want to, not having to worry about that lag time or fast forwarding. So that's a really nice trick that you could do with any URL in particular, but it's nice to be able to save that in your Atlas system. So again, to add an attachment, I click on Add an Attachment under every category and select the specific attachment I'd like to add. Now, let's say I'd like to add a file. I'm here. I would like to add measurement or maybe there's this audio track here that I'd like my students to listen to. I'll click Open, and you'll see it quickly uploads as a file MP3. Now, I don't think audio track is very specific, so again, I can use that Edit button to add a description. Maybe I could say it's a hero narrative. Add a title, click Save, and now that description shows as the title. So it makes it a little bit more clear for me later on as to what I've added to my unit. So any questions or maybe additional details?
Yes, so a couple of questions have come through. One is about the rights of sharing. So if it's something that you've paid for or that you've downloaded from the internet, who can see these basically? So to answer that, we are not copyright lawyers by any means. We provide a system that you can link in whatever you want. That's a good question to talk to your school about. We at Rubicon would never share your information with anywhere, so certainly those documents are safe. They're in a password-protected system. If your school does choose to have a public site that you share with your community, which is like a public version of your Atlas system that some schools choose to share some or all of their information, then that's a good conversation with your administrator about whether or not you're going to share attachments, if you're just going to share some, and what's appropriate. So that's really a better conversation to have with your school about how you plan to use these. From our perspective, we don't share anything, so it's kind of up to you. Hopefully that helps. Let me know if you still have questions along those lines. And Jenny, stop me. I've been answering chat questions if you already covered this. But I'm seeing this Remembering Snell book cover is pretty cool, but it takes up quite a bit of space. If I decided that I didn't want that much real estate going to that image, can I hide the image but still keep it?
Absolutely. So again, clicking that pencil edit button really does pretty much everything you'd like to in terms of modifying your system. And right here you can see I've clicked Image Displayed. I can change that to File, and this allows that file to then become saved as a file link. And you can see now, instead of Remembering Snell the image, you can just see that it's a JPEG. So this allows you to showcase things when you'd like. Maybe if you're using this and showing it to your students, you can also hide images until you're ready for them to look at it. So it's a great way to, again, keep this as more of an interactive, alive document versus just a static sort of repository of items. Awesome. So going on to our fourth tip, if you are a visual learner, feel free to color code connections in your curriculum. So going back up, we've added attachments, and now we're really honing in on these content and skills, maybe some of these enduring understandings and essential questions. Now, we've already done some really great job in making lists, bullet points, which I personally enjoy because it helps me maybe break down more clearly the separate questions or content we're trying to address. But another way you can enhance your map is to begin the color code. So for example, with these enduring understandings, maybe this first enduring understanding about positive self-image maybe has to do with these first two essential questions. I can color code it so that visually I can see and make sure that I have essential questions that tie to enduring understandings, that there's cohesiveness between the separate pieces of content that I'm addressing. And again, I can do that with maybe the second question. Maybe that's going to be green. And so anytime I'm addressing that enduring understanding in the content or essential questions, I can then change that color to be green. And I can do that not just with essential questions, but maybe there are specific skills that go with those enduring understandings. Those colors can also work cohesively. Have you seen this applied in other ways, Megan?
Yes, so color coding is a really fun way to capture information. A couple different ways I've seen it. One is interdisciplinary connections. So perhaps you're doing a unit, like our earlier example, that covers some social studies skills as well as some English language arts skills. Some schools might choose to have social studies information in blue and English information in red, for example, to show what goes with what. So that's one way you might bring that in. Another example we sometimes see is for collaborative courses where more than one teacher is working on a course together. If we do that, we might have our regular enduring understandings, for example, but at the bottom of that category, I might have blue be my color, and I'll go in and add my notes about what went well, what didn't go well, different thoughts. you might put in your notes in red. Maybe we do things that are just a little bit different that we want to capture. So that's just one way to categorize that information.
That's awesome. So again, not only can color coding be used to help organize information, but it allows you to collaborate effectively with teachers that you share courses with. That's great.
And Jenny, we did have a question come up. Someone was asking about a style guide that would help organize all these resources. I see at the top of your screen that you do have a style guide.
Yeah. Let's click on that. So this is, I think, more of a style guide for the unit itself, so how to create the content for each category. You could also, if you would like as a school, in addition to creating that formatting, you can include items such as color coding, maybe require vocabulary lists to be attached for specific categories. Your school can actually create that, and our team can also help you develop the style guide.
Yeah, so definitely a great idea if you haven't considered it to create a resource like that for your teachers to, again, like Jenny mentioned, capture what content goes in these boxes, or those style tips like we want everyone to highlight social studies in blue and science in green, et cetera. So if you'd like to get that set up, just let us know. We'll be happy to reach out to you and work with you on that.
And one note, a slight modifier to that, if maybe a style guide right now is a little bit much, maybe you want to take it a little bit slower. With each category, next to it there is a small gray I, and you can develop hover-overs. So maybe you want to start by addressing enduring understandings. You can create definitions and have us add that into your system so that there's sort of a mini style guide for each section. And then if you wanted to maybe combine all of those and create a more general style guide, that's a way to get started on it. If maybe a full style guide is not something that you're ready for at this moment in time.
And I will be happy. Our style guide that we took a quick look at is publicly available for anyone to see, so I'll go ahead and put that link in the chat window in just a moment as well. So you're welcome to use ours as an example or use it for a while and see what you think.
Yeah. All right. So our next tip, we've color-coded the curriculum, but if you're a tactile learner, not just a visual learner, feel free to print and annotate your unit. So what's really nice, we love going digital now, we love using computers, but sometimes you just need to have that piece of paper in your hand in front of you at your desk to really kind of evaluate and see what's going on in your unit. I know that every once in a while I really like just having that tangible evidence right there. So at the top of every unit, and at the top right-hand corner of most pages, you'll see this Actions button. And when you hover over it, a variety of actions pop down. In addition to being able to use various communication functions, so in addition to pinning this to your Atlas, so you can save this page to your main Atlas dashboard, you can share this with your colleagues, but sometimes it's nice just to have it printed out. So at the very bottom you can see you can either print this, it'll automatically turn it into a PDF to print, or you can export your unit to Word if you happen to want to maybe make some additions or maybe format it in a Word format. So all you have to do is click on it. You'll see that that pops up. I don't want to print this right now, but it's pretty quick and easy. What's really nice is that you can print this for maybe if you have a long-term sub, this is a great way to display that information for them. If you have parents, maybe you can export this to Word, and if you don't want to attach your assessments, you can erase that category and share your enduring understandings and essential questions with them. So it's a way to also share without having to give someone access to the system.
Yes, and if you're someone like me who tends to open Facebook a little bit too often when you're working, sometimes I like to print things out, go to a quiet place, and really make myself focus without the distractions of everything available on my computer.
Yeah, sometimes it's nice just to handwrite things and then get it in after you've thought it through. So the last tip for today, and I think one of the most interesting tips we have, is to involve students in your meta, so opening your unit to student reflection. And, you know, this is up to your teaching style, definitely, but it's really interesting to consider we make these units for our students. And so why not include them in that process and in that learning, not only to show them the work that we do and the thinking that we go through, but to also use their input to influence this unit and to maybe even allow them to self-reflect and see if they think they can address all the content that you've presented. You can use this by showcasing your essential questions to them before, during, and after the unit, maybe seeing if those answers change throughout. One concept that's really interesting too is maybe show them the content and skills, or before showing them, have them brainstorm what they think all of the content and skills for the unit were, and then see if they compare their lists and if you guys both have a similar idea of what's been addressed. You can see here, again, using that color coding tip, we've put in the notes. Maybe we talked with our students, and as a teacher, I reflected that this set of skills was a little ambitious. Maybe I'll narrow it down to fewer skills for maybe more depth with my students. And then maybe I can talk through this with my students and say, hey, these skills were more ambitious. What did you guys get out of this unit? And I can take those notes even below, maybe even in a different color, so student feedback can be green. Again, so this is a great way to allow students to reflect on their learning as well as showcase what you think through as you teach them. I think that's a really great lesson for students to see.
Absolutely, and it's really fun for the kids. My background is second grade, and I know that for the little guys like that, if you show them a secret teacher tool, how the teachers work when they're not there, that's pretty motivating to get to see kind of the behind the scenes. And it's really fun for them to celebrate all these things that they've learned and which things they loved, especially if you get, if you have a stage 3 with some of those activities, letting them reflect on, oh, this was really fun, I love this, this really helped, or this one didn't really work out. Some of those things we just inherently know. But doing it with our kids gives us a chance to actually update it and capture those reflections, especially hopefully you have a reflections category in your template. That's one that I always really love to see. So you can capture all of that. Jenny's background is middle school, and I think middle schoolers would be equally excited to give their input. Maybe not in quite the same way, but absolutely still very happy to share.
Yeah, anytime you give middle schoolers a chance to provide their opinion, they jump at it. So I could see students of all ages really loving the opportunity to take ownership of their learning as you're taking ownership of being able to share what you've worked on so hard. So again, I'm just scrolling through. These are just different ways. Again, you can see that color coding being applied, even a pacing calendar attached. You've got the whole unit sort of outlined that you can see right in front of you. So there are so many ways that you can apply these tips to your daily practice.
So it looks like we are about out of time. Jenny, do we have a slide that shows all 6 tips? I believe we do. Yes, perfect. We had a request for this.
Yes.
So we'll leave you with these tips open. For those of you that do need to jet, I know we're 1 minute late. We've pointed you to the blog already. That blog post does have these tips with little GIFs that you can, I don't know, I like GIFs. But anyway, start that debate later, to show you a little bit more about these. We'll also link in the recording from today to that blog post so that all of this information is in one place. In addition, you will receive a recording of this webinar tomorrow.
Absolutely.
So we are happy to stay on the line. We have our calendars blocked off for at least another half hour, so feel free to chat away with us, but I know many of you need to run. So thank you so much for your time today. We both know that teachers do not have any extra time, so we really value that you've chosen to spend some of it with us.
Thank you so much, and we hope to see you at another webinar soon.
And I did just have a question come through about getting a certificate for this webinar. If any of you would like a certificate of attendance, please go ahead and chat to me, and I'll put you on my list to email you a certificate. If you would rather, you can also email pd@rubicon.com, and we'll be able to send you a certificate from there as well. So I'll put both of those little facts in the chat window, so please do let us know if that's something you need.